Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to the Netherlands once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that I brought back with me from my recent trip down there. So we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. This is going to be my fourth review overall involving this brewery, and I think my third review that's dedicated specifically to one of their beers. But I've had some really nice beers from these guys in the past, and it's definitely nice to feature them here on the channel once again. And this is a style that I've been enjoying quite a few nice examples of in recent times, so fingers crossed this one is as good as the other beers we've had from this brewery before. So we're going to head down to the southwest of the Netherlands once again, to Middelburg, and we're having a look at another beer from Brouwerij Kees. So this particular beer is called the Sunturn. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is an American barley wine. It's aged in cognac barrels, so I guess we should call the video Sunturn Cognac Barrel Aged. But yeah, this is a beer that I bought at De Bierwinkel in Leiden, which is about halfway between Amsterdam to the north and Den Haag to the south. Awesome beer shop, and I really do recommend that you go and visit Leiden if you find yourself in either Den Haag or in Amsterdam. A beautiful little city, and you'll get some great beer there as well. But yeah, this I think should be very, very interesting. I've been enjoying some really nice barley wines recently, and as I've told you in my previous Dutch reviews, the standard Dutch craft beer is very, very high. So on that note, since it's a Dutch beer, a special shout out to my friends in the Dutch Beer Collective. So we have Remy at Beer Geek Holland, he is the original Dutch beer tuber. Then we have Herben at Dutch Beer Geek, we've got Thomas at Thomas Open, and now we have Douglas at Beers with Douglas. All awesome guys, very, very nice. What I'll do is I'll put the link to their collective pages, to the Instagram and the Facebook, so you can check them out and you'll find the links to all of their individual channels there. So go and show them some love, reviewing a lot of different Dutch beers, doing quite a few reviews in English as well, but definitely worth checking them out. And a very special shout out indeed to my friend Thomas, and it's his birthday today. He's 39, he's getting old, so make sure especially you show him some love. Yeah, make sure you check them out. So check out De Bierwinkel and check out the Dutch Beer Collective. But yeah, let's see how we get on with this beer then. Hopefully this makes for a good review, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as well. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brouwerij Kees before, and hopefully we can add some more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Dutch beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment, because I've still got quite a few beers that I brought back with me, and I'm sure beyond that some of the Dutch guys will organise some more Dutch beer boxes and stuff like that for me, so you will hopefully be able to see a steady stream of Dutch beers on the channel going forward. But we'll see how that goes. Always end up with a huge stockpile of beer, but that's just kind of how it goes. But as always, please get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Brouwerij Kees once again then. So Brouwerij Kees, as I've already mentioned to you, are based in Middelburg in the southwestern part of the Netherlands, and the company was founded by Kees Boerman back in 2015. So Kees started home brewing in 1996 in his kitchen with a small 10-litre kit, and this allowed him to experiment with lots of different beers and different styles, basically, just, trying lots of different things essentially. But a bit later on, in 2007, he became the master brewer at Brouwerij Emmelis, and this is where he worked for 7 years, and he helped them expand quite dramatically. He helped expand their brewing capacity and just get their name out there. I still need to try a beer from Brouwerij Emmelis actually, but I do have one in the fridge that I'll see about reviewing for you quite soon, in fact. But a bit later on, having worked there for about 7 years, he decided in 2014 that he wanted to have his own brewery, and so he found a premises in his hometown of Middelburg to get this started up. But apparently he used crowdfunding in the early stages to get this new brewery up and running, and they've been growing strongly ever since their inception. Over the years, they've continually built up the capacity of the brewery, and they've expanded their barrel aging program a lot as well, and they've been very prolific, in fact. So as of March 2021, they've produced around 135 different kinds of beer, and as I said, I've had some really interesting things from them over the years. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Brouwerij Kees. The beers that I've had from these guys so far have always been kind of big malty beasts. The first one I remember was the Caramel Fudge Stout. And then a little bit after that, I had the Scotch Ale, which I thought was really, really nicely done. And then the most recent beer I've had involving these guys was a quadruple that was a collaboration with Närke Kulturbryggeri here in Sweden, actually. So yeah, those have all been really quite nice beers. So I guess I need to try like an IPA or something from these guys at some point. But yeah, it doesn't tend to be the IPAs that we'll get up here in Sweden or across the water in Denmark. It tends to be the bigger malty things. I think just for the fact that they travel a little bit better. So the next time I'm down in the Netherlands, I will need to make sure I get a couple of hoppy beers from these guys, maybe like a New England and a West Coaster or something like that. It'd be interesting to try a lager from them as well. I don't know if they've done any lagers right enough, but then, you know, knowing how good these guys are at malty beers, a Doppelbock from these guys could also be a very, very interesting proposition. But yeah, like I said, that's all I can really tell you about Brouwerij Kees for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer then. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. I think it should be really quite nice. I'm noticing as well that this one actually has the Swedish pant on it as well, so maybe, just maybe, this beer will come through Systembolaget at some point. I'm not quite sure. But it says on the side here, at the beginning of 2015, Kees Buberman, already a very experienced brewer, started his own brewery, an instant success. His craft beers quickly conquered the Dutch market and now make their way throughout the whole world. Pure and craft means the best quality ingredients plus skill, willfulness, innovation and the depth of knowledge acquired from years of creative brewing. Kees Buberman. There you can see his signature down on the bottom there. I'm still getting used to this little viewfinder screen on this GoPro because it reflects like nothing on earth off these bottles actually. But yeah, it says on the back here that this beer was brewed on the 21st of December 2019. It's hopped with Equinaut and it uses pale ale malt. So yeah, I don't know if I've ever had Equinaut in a barley wine before, but that should be quite interesting in fact. But yeah, it says canned on the 21st of the 6th 2020. So yeah, it's been brewed. Yeah, it was brewed on the 21st of the 12th 2019 and then canned on the 21st of the 6th 2020, and they're recommending a best before of the 21st of the 6th 2023. I would have thought that you could age it a little bit longer than that, but again, the thing I'm not sure about with cans is, do they seal as well as bottles with the wax tops and things on them? I'm not sure about how airtight this kind of screwed on top thing is with cans. It's better for light of course, but I'm not sure about the big styles of beer like barley wines and imperial stouts and stuff. Maybe bottles are a bit better for them, but who knows. But regardless, yeah, this one is a 12% barley wine, cognac barrel aged for 6 months. So yeah, this should be quite interesting. Very, very curious about this one. I can't quite remember what I paid for this one. It must have been €7 or €8, come to think of it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this is one that I bought myself, because I ended up with a mix of Dutch things. Some of the ones were given, quite a few of them were given to me by the Dutch guys, but I also bought, you know, 7 or 8 beers at De Bierwinkel in Leiden. I'm sure this is one of the ones that I bought at De Bierwinkel. But yeah, there we go. So let's get it out then and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. And like I said earlier, I've been having some really nice examples of barley wines in recent times. Since this one involves cognac as well, from what I gather, Remy Den Dupe of Beer Geek Holland is a little bit of a cognac fiend. Apparently he's very much into that. Cognac, from what I gather, is a distillate of wine. So yeah, something that I need to have a little go at, because I can appreciate a good wine, but I'm just not, as I say, too familiar with them. So trying some cognacs with Remy could make for an interesting video. We need to see about that. But yeah, let me just check. That's there. My OCD is now happy. And there we go. So, as you could see with this beer, when we poured it, it had a very, very thin layer of a kind of medium beige head, almost a little bit tan actually, which is quite interesting. But yeah, that head has just faded away to be pretty much nothing, and there's just a little bit of foam around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, in terms of colour, this is most definitely one of the darker barley wines that you're going to come across. If we shine the light through this, even then you don't get a lot of light through this one. This is a very, very dark sort of chestnutty, rosewoody kind of colour actually. It's a very, very dark beer actually. I'd maybe even go as far as saying that's kind of like Coca-Cola coloured. So I really like how that goes together. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. Or the surface, I should say. There's not much head on this beer, but yeah, it looks very, very nice, and as I say, one of the darker barley wines that I've come across. Remember, when it comes to these beers, there's a few things that can affect the colour of your beer. One, the type of malts that you use in the first instance. Two, the length of your wort boil. The more you boil, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get the darker colour of beer. But it is dependent to quite a heavy degree on what type of malts you use in the first place. Then barrel aging, of course, is going to affect it, and if it's a sour beer or whatever, you can get adjuncts also affecting the colour of the beer as well. But yeah, this is definitely one of the darker barley wines I've come across. Like I said, a very dark sort of rosewoody colour. It does have a degree of haze to it as well, from what I can see. When we shine the light through it, definitely a sort of Pepsi Max, Coca-Cola type colour, this one. But yeah, certainly looks really nice. A barley wine like this is probably going to undergo like a 5 or 6 hour boil or something like that, and that'll be the reason why it's quite as dark as it is, or one of the main reasons. But yeah, let's have a little closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. I think it should be really nice, and you know, straight away you can get a hell of a lot of complexity out of this beer. That's just beautiful. That is absolutely lovely. I can see why I was recommended this one in De Beerwinkel. So yeah, this is an awesome, awesome smelling beer. Where do we begin with this? Yeah, beautiful stuff. So straight away with this beer, you get the barrel aging out of it. I think that's always interesting with barrel aging is usually what it does is that it takes your mouthfeel down a little bit and makes the beer a little bit less thick, but in exchange you usually get a lot more of these kind of infused woody flavours and stuff like that. But straight away on the aroma of this beer you get that lovely woody base to it. It's almost got a teeny little bit of a slightly spicy note to it, but you get a lot of sultanas out of this one. This beer really, really smells like sultanas for me. By sultanas, because I know there's been a bit of confusion over this sort of terminology on previous videos. When I talk about sultanas, I'm referring to you know, mixed dried grapes. If it was just the purple ones, I would call those raisins, but sultanas for me is a mix of like dried red, white and green grapes, and sometimes you get a little bit of purple grape in there as well. So just to clear that up, I get a hell of a lot of raisin. I get a hell of a lot of sultana out of this beer. There's a lot of that. You've got a nice woody base to the beer, and then you get some of that lovely dried sultana grapey sort of thing out of it. It smells very, very nice. But yeah, it's just a beautiful smelling beer that I can imagine what cognac is actually like. I don't know if I've ever tried cognac, come to think of it, so that is something that I will need to do with Remy. I don't know if Remy's actually got some cognac reviews on his channel. I think it was Thomas was telling me that he is a bit of a cognac fiend, so maybe that's something he needs to think about. But yeah, beautiful smelling beer this. So on top of that woodiness and on top of that kind of sultana type aroma, you've got a good chunk of brown sugar in here. It almost smells like a sort of caramel wafer, if you like. It smells like it's got a little bit of a kind of caramel wafery sort of thing. You can definitely smell that deep, highly oily treacle molasses kind of thing coming out of the beer. At the same time, you do get some sweeter caramel out of it. There's a wee bit of that kind of caramel wafery biscuity sort of thing. There's a whole host of stuff just going on in this beer. Of course, you've got a few woody undertones and a few other woody undertones that are not quite part of the barrel aging. So it's got a little bit of a smooth woodiness to it. I want to say there's a wee touch of vanilla coming out of this beer. I'm just wondering as well how many of those kind of sultana-like aromas and flavours could be attributed to the Equinaut. I've never had Equinaut in a barley wine before, and normally you would associate Equinaut with like sort of limey aromas and flavours. So that's definitely an interesting point about this beer for sure. But Yeah, and it says it's only pale malt in this, so you know, to get this colour, if it's only pale malt in here, the barrels must have had a hell of an effect on it, but that must be a very, very long boil barley wine to get this kind of colour out of to get that out of it. If it's only pale malt that's in here, I'm surprised at that. But yeah, you get a lot, as I say, huge treacle molasses kind of notes out of this one, highly caramelised brown sugars. There is a wee bit of a sweeter caramel in there. You get a little bit of an almost kind of honeycomb type aroma infused into that. And yeah, there's a few nutty elements in the beer as well. There's one or two little sort of grainy, very slightly bready elements as well, but those are quite minimal compared to the brown sugars. The focus on the malty side of things is all about the brown sugars, absolutely. So yeah, lots of things going on in there. But like I say, a few sort of slightly spicier woody tones in there, maybe a wee tiny touch of a sort of wholemealy, slightly rye bready type thing, but that's quite minimal. Then a few nutty tones in the beer as well, perhaps even just a little tiny touch of vanilla. But the malty and barrel aging side of this beer is, you know, very, very nice. Hoppy side of things then, let's see what we can get out of that. On the hoppy side of things, there is a wee bit of hop still kind of still noticeable in this one. Of course, the longer you age this beer, the more the hoppy character is going to drop out of it, and when it's been cognac barrel aged for about 6 months before they've canned it, it is going to have it is going to drop a little bit in terms of its hoppy characteristics. But yeah, this one, as I say, it was brewed on the 21st of December 2019. That was one of the other things about this beer as well that I think I forgot to mention. It was brewed, I think it was canned on the longest day. I think it was brewed on the shortest day of the year, and then it was canned on the longest day of the year. So quite an interesting combination of that. That's why it's called Sunturn. I forgot to mention that earlier on, because I wrote that in the brewery notes as well for this one. But yeah, pretty cool thing to do. But yeah, the longer, as I say, it had been aged for about 6 months, so a lot of the hoppy character would have dropped out of it. I've had the beer for about 9 months. No, I've had it a bit less than that. It's been in the can for 9 months now. So yeah, that's in total then. You're going to have this one. This is about 15 months in, but you still get a wee bit of hoppy character out of it. There's a teeny little bit of earthiness there. There's still a wee bit of a kind of floral remnant as well. And you also just get a little touch of grassiness out of it. So that's your green component. But the fruity side of things, like I say, on the hoppy side of this beer, it's got some really interesting characteristics. So as I say, there's a lot of kind of sultana type note coming out of the beer. If you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, you do get a little bit of a juicy raisin. I want to say there's a wee tiny touch of plum to this one. You also get some figgy notes and a little bit of a sort of light blackcurranty note, and you can tell that these are more to do with the barrel aging just because of how oily those aromas are. So yeah, like I say, a little bit of blackcurrant, a little bit of a lighter kind of figgy note, some juicier plums, and then you've got there's slightly sharper raisiny notes in there. The more that you smell of this beer as well, you start to get a little bit of an almost cakey element out of it, like a kind of fruity, an alcoholic fruit cake, like a brandy cake or something like that. So yeah, this beer has a hell of a lot of complexity in its aroma, and I think we've spent about 7 or 8 minutes just talking about the aroma of the beer. But take a bit of time to think that over. That's always half the experience with craft beers, but it's about time for us to try this one now, so let's go for it. So this one is the Sunturn Cognac Barrel Aged Edition, brewed on the shortest day of 2019 and then canned on the longest day of 2020, and then in the meantime aged in cognac barrels for 6 months from Brouwerij Kees down in the Netherlands in Middelburg. Happy 39th birthday to my good friend Thomas Hoendam over at Thomas Open. Hope you have an awesome day, and I'll be joining you in your stream very, very shortly. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Damn. Once again, Brouwerij Kees, they really, they just nail these sort of big malty leaning styles. They've just got a knack for these high alcohol beers. Such a good recommendation, this one. Such a good recommendation. That's just a ridiculous beer. Love it. I do really need to try something a bit more kind of straight up from this brewery, though. All the beers I get from these guys are just absolute monsters. But yeah, when you smell the aroma of this beer, this is one of the ones that really translates very, very well into the flavour. A lot of it is as you would expect. But yeah, let's just fire into this and kind of break it down for you. Straight away in that middle third of your palate, you get that lovely woody sort of quality just blanket in the middle of your tongue. The wood actually dries up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, and it has a wee tiny touch of a slightly spicy sort of thing going on. But straight away on top of that woody note, you can get the kind of sultana type flavours that I was talking about before, those cognac-y notes sitting there. And it's really lovely. It's really interesting just how you've got that woody base and then a little bit of the kind of fruity cognac-y layer sitting on top of that, and then you've got the brown sugars and everything else coming out there too. So yeah, that's really interesting for sure. This is just a really well executed beer once again. So on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little touch of a sort of cakey type thing, like a boozy kind of cakey quality there. It does have a wee bit of a kind of grainy element to it. The further that you know, the further back that you go, if you like. But then on the back third of your palate, again, you feel the woody notes coming out. You can feel the graininess getting slightly more intense until it's just almost a little bit dry on the very, very back of your palate there. But yeah, you can feel the thickness in the back third of your you can feel that the thickness in the back third of your tongue is just a little bit higher as well, because you've got some of the yeasty notes coming out. I always find that on that back third of the tongue you get quite a bit of a yeastiness coming out of the beer. So yeah. So yeah, the flavour profile on this beer is just craziness. It's just absolute craziness. It's just lovely. So yeah, got a bit of that yeasty, cakey sort of thing on the back third of your palate. As you move further forward, you can feel the thickness of the beer just gradually drops away until it reaches that border region. What you'll find as well is that there's quite a little bit of a juicy, fruity thing just builds up on top of that border region. But then you go into the middle third of your palate, and on top of that kind of sultana type layer, that's where you get these big brown sugary notes. But they seem to be in like a, it's almost like you've just got a big thick kind of mountain, if you like, of brown sugars sitting there in the middle third of your palate on top of this big juicy fruity sort of thing, and the beer gets progressively more sultana like the further you go into the aftertaste. The other thing I'm noticing about this is that if you move in those base layers towards the kind of front half of that middle third of your tongue, you do get a wee tiny hint of vanilla out of this one. It is quite minimal though. It's less than I thought it was going to be compared to the aroma. But you get a few. You do get a few. If you go to the very centre of your tongue and then just follow the line of your tongue forward, you will notice a few nutty elements to the beer as well, definitely. But yeah, in terms of the brown sugars, then in the very centre of your tongue, you can feel that highly caramelised, treacly molasses sort of thing. It's not dark. It's not toasted. It's just really thick. And the further you go out from that middle part of your tongue, it does get progressively kind of sweeter. So you get a little bit of a you do get a little bit of a more sort of caramelly element as you move further out from that, and you move to the edge of your tongue. It certainly gets a little bit more it certainly becomes a little bit more sort of, not quite biscuity, but more sort of caramel wafer-like, absolutely. So, and you can feel that it's kind of layered as well. So you've got a sort of thick layer of a treacly molasses sort of thing. On top of that, you get a nice little bit of a sweeter caramel element coming out of the beer. And then on top of that, at the height of this layer, that's, pardon me, when you get this sort of honeycomb caramel wafer sort of thing, and that forms the top layer, and that just goes down above everything else and kind of spreads out. That's what's going on in the very middle of your palate here. So you can feel it's a lot of these beers I try are very, very layered, but the brown sugars in this one are really, really interesting, definitely, absolutely. Yeah, so the malty, woody side of this beer, I think, is definitely one of the quirkiest that I've had, and I'm going to just sit and sip on this for the live stream that I'm going to join after filming this one. I think this is a really just nice sipping beer. But yeah, could well be the best case beer that I've had so far. But that said, I really did enjoy the caramel fudge stout, and I really enjoyed the Scotch ale that I had as well. The quadrupel that they did with Nyakia Kultebryggeri was also very, very good. But this one is just very, very unique, I would say. So if you ever see this beer, I'm guessing now, I think I must have paid about €7 or €8 for it, and I don't regret that in the slightest. But if you're in another country, you'll probably pay a little bit more, right enough. But I would just say to you, just go for this. This is definitely very unique, and I think I can say that quite safely after 2,750 beer reviews. This one is pretty damn unique compared to what I've had over the years. So yeah, let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then before we move on to the fruits. So yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, it is kind of what you'd expect. In the back corners of the palate, there's a little tiny touch of earthiness there. The earthiness comes forward a little bit. It develops a little bit of a herbal quality then as you move further forward along the side of the tongue. It progressively gets just a little touch more floral, and there's just a little remnant of floral aromaticity on this one the further you go forward. Remember what I said earlier about the hops dropping out of this beer, that the longer you age it, and also as a result of the 6-month barrel aging. You really, to be fair though, you really need about 6 months for a barley wine to kind of mature. You need at least 6 months before you can drink a barley wine and fully get what it's going for. But then yeah, around the front curve of the palate, the beer is a little bit lighter and more grassy. And yeah, I think that covers the green component quite well. There is a wee tiny bit of zestiness there in this beer. What I will say is about the fruity side of things, you can detect just a little hint of that limey trait that you would normally get from Equinox. I am getting just a little touch of lime on that very front part of your palate. So yeah, that's definitely quite interesting for sure. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity part of the beer, or at least the fruity component that's coming from the hops in this one. So yeah, as I always say, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. On that border region between front and middle third of your palate, you can feel there is a bit of a boozy kind of cakey element coming up out of the beer, which I think is which is nice. I really like that slight cakiness that the beer has in those border regions. And then again, yeah, there's a little bit of a graininess there, but forming the base of that front third of your palate, you've got a really nice smoothness. You have got a lovely sort of just slightly woody and kind of almost cakey smoothness underneath the fruits there. But in terms of the esters themselves, let's just look at this. So yeah, when you take the beer in, it's definitely got that sort of sultana, cognac-y vibe to it. But at the back of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a wee tiny touch of a plum. Although the more that you progress with that, the plum sort of note kind of disappears. It becomes a little bit more sultana-like, but there is a little bit of that sharper raisiny note. And as you move further forward, you can feel the sultanas come out a little bit more and more. There's maybe a tiny little hint of a figgy note to it, but not a lot. And then you also get a wee touch of a kind of blackcurranty vibe coming out of this one. But in terms of the fruits, I would really just say that it becomes more and more like a juicy sort of sultana note in there. You're maybe getting one or two little sort of peary esters. Like I said, on the very tip of the tongue, there's just a wee tiny hint of a sort of limey note coming out of the beer, which I think is just the remnants of the Equinox as well, because Equinox would normally give you quite a limey type element to the beer, and you definitely get a wee tiny touch of lime on that tip of the tongue. But really, the fruits in this beer, like I said, little touch plummy, wee bit of a raisiny note, little hints of figgy, black curranty kind of elements, but it really just comes across like a juicy sultana. Remember, dried white grapes, dried green grapes, that's what I'm getting out of this one first and foremost. But like I say, this is just a beautiful beer. Actually, it's definitely a sipper, this one. It's one that you're just going to sip and enjoy, but it's beautifully done. So hats off this one to Brouwerij Kees. This has to be one of the most unique beers, I think, that I've reviewed on the channel so far. And it just goes to show you, cognac barrel aging, there's quite a few breweries doing things like this. I mean, recently I had one of the silver series from Puasta in Tartu in the southeast of Estonia, and they aged their beer on a Madeira barrel. You can do some really cracking things, but cognac barrel aging seems to be becoming a little bit more popular within barrel aging programs, and on the basis of this beer you can see why. You can absolutely see why. So maybe a Cognac barrel aged Scotch ale could be an interesting one. We'd love to have a go at one of those, or a Cognac barrel aged Doppelbock. That could be interesting, but maybe in the case of the Doppelbock, Doppelbock's a lager, so I've got a feeling that could sweeten it up just a little bit too much, to be honest. But see, in the case of this barley wine though, it certainly does work. So I could be proved wrong, but anyway, I think that covers the flavour profile of this beer quite nicely. Let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So yeah, in terms of mouthfeel, this beer, I wouldn't say this is the thickest beer that I've come across, but it fits into the kind of bottom end of that full-bodied category, if you like. The carbonation is very, very smooth. The beer does have an oily element to it, but I would be more tempted to describe this beer as slick rather than anything else. So yeah, quite a slick, oily beer. The malty, the malty elements in this beer are where it's at. I mean, you get a lovely kind of woody character that comes out of the beer. It dries up a little bit the further you go into the aftertaste, and you've got some lovely, just big brown sugary elements to this one. I think it's just a beautifully executed beer. The brown sugars just get a little bit drier and more kind of caramel wafer-like the further you go into the aftertaste, but the level of brown sugar you have in this is great. The woody, so you've got a woody base basically. You've got some lovely juicy cognac, sultana type flavours in underneath, on top of that in the middle. Then you've got the brown sugars on top, and it's just lovely. In terms of hoppy bitterness, not a lot to this one. I'd be surprised if this was even like 15 IBUs. But there are a few remnants of the green components in the hop in there, and then you've got those lovely oily, juicy, fruity esters coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, really interesting fruity characteristics in this one, but it's all about the sultanas, it's all about those cognac-y flavours. So yeah, the Equinox doing a really interesting thing in this beer. So yeah, definitely one of the quirkiest beers I've ever come across here on the channel, and that's what you want. After 2,750 reviews, you want beers that are going to challenge your palate and make you think. So thumbs up to Brouwerij Kees for having a go at this and producing something random. So yeah, well done to them. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the Sunturn Cognac Barrel Aged Edition, 12% American style barley wine from Brouwerij Kees in Middelburg in the southwest of the Netherlands. Once again, a happy birthday to my good friend Thomas Hoendam over at Thomas Open. Make sure you check out his channel, as well as the other guys in the Dutch Beer Collective, very good friends of mine. And do make sure you check out the Bierwinkel, check out all those links in the video description below. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers have been from Brouwerij Kees. Hopefully we can return to these guys in the fairly near future, and I look forward to trying some more kind of straight up beers, some IPAs and some New England IPAs. I'll need to make sure I get some of those the next time I'm in the Netherlands. But this was a beautiful beer, and definitely one of the quirkiest I've reviewed in quite some time. So yeah, awesome. So let's leave it at that. Thank you again for watching. As I say, check out my social media, check out Brouwerij Kees, check out the Dutch Beer Collective and the Bierwinkel, and I'll see you guys soon. Slange, Skull, Prost, and see you guys in the next review. Cheers.